The second thing what we wanted to talk about, that's super cool to have the flow functionality for SharePoint Online and all of that. But the one thing which was also cool because there's a lot of people still in on-premises, and there's a lot of customers who are doing hybrid deployments, which is absolutely one of the key value propositions in the Microsoft platform. So you can choose to keep some of your stuff in on-prem, some of your stuff in cloud. And SharePoint 2019 preview started on 24th of July. So we released a blog post in tech community related on SharePoint 2019. That blog post and the content which was actually released didn't that much concentrate on what's available from the developer platform. And now that I came back from vacation, I've been trying to address those gaps from a messaging perspective, because absolutely we need to address the developer platform documentation side of the story as well, because there's a lot of people still doing even farm solutions and which are absolutely 100% supported in the future as well. So for rest part of the call, we're going to concentrate on the 2019 developer platform. I'm going to do a live demo on this as well. But few slides. So how do we actually get started on SharePoint 2019 preview? So first of all, if you're interested in testing this, you need to download the 2019 preview. I created an AKMS link for that one earlier today. So AKMS SP Dev preview, that will point to the blog post where this announcement was actually done. So the 2019 announcement that it's available. In the blog post, you'll find links to the DVD or ISO files, and also on the guidance files, which among the other things, they actually contain the license to install the 2019 preview, because the installer is asking the license ID when you're running through that. So you need to actually access those files. The easiest way to actually get started with this one is really to use Azure or whatever is your virtual machine platform, whatever is your preference. Obviously, I use Azure because I can really easily spin up my environments there. Now, I'm going to show you what I did, but technically, quickly explaining what I did is that back in like a while ago, I created my SharePoint 2013 environment in Azure, and I used out-of-the-box templates which are available in Microsoft Azure, which actually creates a separate AD machine, a separate SQL machine, and a separate SharePoint 2013 server. So now what I did for 2019 is that I just added a new 2019 server and associated that to the same Azure AD and the same SQL server. So now I'm actually then in the same environment, and I didn't need to spin up the whole setup again. Andy is asking link to SharePoint 2019, AKMS SP 2019 preview underneath the first bullet point. That's where you can find the links directly there. Yes. Enable, so whenever you have then run the install or enabled or installed SharePoint 2019, run the prereq, run the installers, run the setup and config thing. Not going to deep dive on what's actually happening there, but you need to enable the adding model. So SharePoint framework, if you're planning to use the SharePoint framework in SharePoint 2019, you need to enable add-ins in the environment. And that means that you need to make sure that you have app service application enabled and subscription settings service application. If you are setting this by using the out-of-the-box helper wizard and not using PowerShells, you need to actually still manually create the subscription setting service, because that's not created by default by the automation wizard, which is a pity. I don't know why and why somebody made the decision, but it is what it is. And then you need to actually add an app domain to the farm, even though you would be using just SharePoint Framework and not using apps. And SharePoint Framework doesn't actually use app domains. And the reason why you need to do this is that SharePoint Framework actually piggybacks on the add-in infrastructure when you're deploying stuff. And in the add-in infrastructure, it doesn't really understand that, hey, oh, you're actually using SPPKG file, not an app file. So there's no exceptions on that. And that's why the add-in model has to be enabled, at least for now. Now, then you want to install obviously Node.js and npm-yo and call the basic setups for SharePoint Framework development. And you want to install SharePoint Framework 1.4 or 1.4.1. There might be some changes on this one. We're still debating on the official final document guidance on this one, but we're still in preview how it's going. And in the preview timeframe, at least for me, the 1.4.1 actually works perfectly well. Now, And when you're actually creating a SharePoint Framework solution, you need to choose SharePoint Online only as the baseline option. And that might seem slightly confusing, but that's because in the SharePoint Framework, when you're creating a solution, there's two options. Are you targeting SharePoint 2016 or are you targeting SharePoint Online? And we don't have yet an option for SharePoint 2019. So that's going to be part of the SharePoint Framework 1.6, which is scheduled to be out later this month. I'm going to explain that in practice in a live demo as well. But after this one, we basically then have a SharePoint Framework running in your farm, and you can actually do extensions, you can do other stuff as well. Now, if you are a SharePoint developer, you're probably quite interested in what is actually supported in SharePoint 2019. And this is now the status for preview. There might be some exceptions for this for RTM, but they will be really, really small. So this is pretty much the status for Go Live as well. So there will be obviously modern pages, modern lists, big thing, modern pages, modern experiences, modern sites. So modern team site without association to the group and communication site is included. Modern sub-site will be there in GA. Right now in the preview version of SharePoint 2019, the modern sub-site is not actually exposed in the UI. We are debating on giving you the workaround on that one. You can actually, because it works in the preview as well, but we'll give you the workaround in our documentation most likely later. SharePoint Framework extensions and web parts absolutely supported. Webhooks are supported as well. Asset packaging is supported, and that means that if you create a SharePoint Framework solution, you can just include JavaScript files and images inside of the SPPKG file, and it will host that for you from the app catalog. So you don't have to worry about the CDN. Column formatting and list column formatting is there. Tenant scope deployment is available, so you're able to push web parts directly across your farm by adding them to the app catalog. Big thing as well, and ALM APIs is available as well. Now, what's not available, well, before we actually, on the yes part still, just to not avoid confuse anybody, obviously, classic experience is still there, farm solutions is still there, sandbox solutions still there, feature framework still there. So all of the other stuff, classic stuff, absolutely there. Everything what you had in SharePoint 2016 pretty much is available in 2019 as well, just to avoid any confusion. Now, yes, question for Chris. Chris is asking, row formatting is out. That is correct, because row formatting is not yet even released in SharePoint Online. So absolutely. Sandbox solutions technically still work in SharePoint 2019, but probably you shouldn't be doing that. So that's all good. Now, is there a plan to allow modern subsites in a long term? SharePoint EU call yesterday implied it was no. I don't know what is a SharePoint EU call, but that's wrong, actually. We are looking into allowing modern subsites in a long term for SharePoint Online and for on-premises as well. So sure, we recommend people to have potentially individual sites in an individual site collection that is more performant design and using hub sites in SharePoint Online. Now, in on-premises, hub sites are not supported. So they didn't actually make, they were released in SharePoint Online slightly too late for getting them included in SharePoint 2019. And that's why hub sites are not available in 2019 and will not be there in GA. Site designs, unfortunately, not there. Tenant properties are not there. Modern themes are not there. This is actually even slightly painful, to be honest, because the out-of-the-box modern themes for modern sites and communication sites is there, but the capability for you to introduce a modern theme as an option is unfortunately not available. You can, however, use the classic, what is it, look and feel, or look, what is it, the classic theme capability, whatever it's called. I can't remember. Site collection app catalog might be actually there. It's pretty close. Thank you, Composite Looks, mentioned in the window. And the site collection app catalog, right now it doesn't work. In preview, it might be there in GA. We're looking into potentially making that happen as a hotfix. In general, SharePoint Framework third-party version will be 1.4 or 1.41. This is still slightly debatable. There is a pretty big difference, however, between 1.4 and 1.41. because there's a difference between the node supported node versions and NPM versions. So we're trying to push it to the 1.41, but we haven't yet really locked the whole thing. Good. And are we looking at a few years without hub sites? For on-premises, unfortunately, that seems to be now the status. We can't promise when there will be additional capabilities for on-premises. Potentially they might at some point, potentially they might not. So don't quote me on saying that some of these capabilities will be released later. The hub sites went GA in SharePoint Online too late, comparing to the timelines of getting stuff included in SharePoint 2019. Because we need to remember that SharePoint 2019 is based on SharePoint Online. The latest version is already in SharePoint Online. The SharePoint 2019 is a fork from earlier this year from SharePoint Online, and then we clean up the cloud-dependent capabilities away. Cool. Cross-site buffering supported. Don't use that. I think it's actually supported still. I don't think we removed cross-site buffering. I personally always recommended people away from cross-site buffering due to numerous reasons, but let's not actually concentrate on that. Now, next steps for SharePoint 2019 development. So some things before I do the live demo as well. So the CSAM NuGet, so client-side object model NuGet for SharePoint 2019. I was planning to get it out before this call. Unfortunately, there was an unexpected certification thingy, which I still need to figure out with NuGet people. ETA right now is tomorrow, so you can actually then start doing development against SharePoint 2019. What's actually kind of interesting, technically, SharePoint 2016 CSAM NuGet does work with SharePoint 2019, but that's then missing some of the capabilities which are available in 2019. I'm not going to deep dive on the versioning differences here. I might actually do that later in some of these calls and why that is, but let's not actually concentrate on that one in this one. Now, SharePoint 2019 native support in SharePoint Framework 1.6. So in SharePoint Framework 1.6, which is ETA by end of August, there will be an option where you can actually target the code to be targeted on SharePoint 2019 onwards, including SharePoint Online. So basically, you will have then 3 different options when you run the Yeoman template, and one of them will be then for 2019. API documentation updates, ETA in September. So API, CSAM API, server-side API updates. We unfortunately somehow magically didn't do this for SharePoint 2016. I do not understand why. So now we're fixing that for 2019. So we're absolutely generating different documentation for that. And other documentation will be then gradually introduced as well. So obviously highly dependent on what kind of feedback you as a community are giving us, because we have quite significant resourcing challenges on the documentation side as well. So we need to understand what is the highest demand on the documentation requirements. Now, key guidance on SharePoint 2013 or SharePoint 2016 is 100% still valid. So feature framework, the classic farm solution development, all of the different, those kind of things absolutely work in SharePoint 2019 as well. So we're not going to actually have a, let's say, copy of that content. We rather complement that content with the SharePoint 2019 relevant stuff. Cool. A lot of talking in a short time frame because I wanted to make sure that we have a time for a quick demo as well. So let me actually share my screen and let's see that we get stuff recorded and moving. It is that screen. And loading 3 dots. I can see that somebody should be seeing my screen. Somebody needs to confirm. 1, 2, 3. Yes, excellent. Cool. So let's have a look on things. So first of all, how to get started on the preview is that if you write AKMS, I'm going to actually zoom in here, AKMS SP 2019 preview. That's going to actually land you on announcing availability on SharePoint Server 2019 preview page from Bill Bear, which concentrates on the end user capabilities. And if you scroll down here, you can actually find the relevant download links And also what you need to have a look on is this reviewer guide and quick start guide, because this contains the licensing information or the license information for 2019. There was a question around guidance on upgrading from 2016 to 2019. To be honest, I haven't checked on that at all, so I can't confirm or deny do we have guidance on that or not. So simply haven't had a time to check that. But this basically gives you the preview version, and you're able to then install that. So in my case, what I've done, like explained, I actually have a 2013 environment with an Azure AD SQL Server provisioned at some point, and then what I did was that I just added my 2019 preview machine right next to that setup. So this way, I'm just expanding my on-premises environments on that setup, well, in this particular subscription. So I do have quite a few subscriptions, but this is my MSDN subscription. But technically, that's how I added my 2019, pretty easily available in Azure for my VM environment. So obviously, every one of you probably have your own way of doing this, and that's absolutely fine. We'll anyway add guidance and an article which is explaining how to get started sooner or later in our developer documentation as well. Now let's see. Here's my actually SharePoint 2019 environment. So few things here. So what did I actually wanted to pinpoint? So a few things from a service application side. So we get this one covered. So in here, if you run the configuration wizard, so if when you run the SharePoint 2019 installation, it actually asks you the configuration wizard to run as one of the options when you start up. Now, some of you might say, and all of the advanced people are saying that, well, you should never ever use the wizard. But if you're using this for development usage, well, the wizard is doing pretty decent job. So you don't actually have to wait or run the PowerShells and all of that to configure everything. It configures your environment pretty nicely. And it actually creates also the app management service, so app management service application, but it does not create subscription service application. So that's something what you need to manually create using PowerShell, and this is something what we will absolutely include in our documentation, but you need to create this to your tenant as well to be able to use SharePoint framework in your SharePoint 2019 environment. The second thing what you need to do in the form is create the app catalog, and also configure the app URLs. Even though SharePoint Framework doesn't use the app domain, but these are pre-requirements in the process, and potentially we'll look into skipping this by the GA. So we'll see if we can actually get it fixed. But you need to do this for preview at least. After that's actually done, you are then you're basically ready for SharePoint Framework development. In general, in SharePoint 2019, it is almost like SharePoint Online, well, in certain ways. So it looks like a SharePoint. Here's the SharePoint Home. If I go to the if I go to the app launcher, we can actually see that there's a newsfeed still. There's a OneDrive link. There's a SharePoint, so it looks like a SharePoint Online environment. Now, in here, I can absolutely then create sites. I can create modern team sites. I can create modern communication sites, depending again on your self-service site collection creation or self-service site collection creation settings. In this case, let's actually create one site here, SQL demo. And this is actually, let's create a modern team site. Community call demo. And creating of these sites is obviously super fast because these are modern sites. So 1, 2, 3, there's my site, voila. And that's pretty cool how fast it is comparing to the SharePoint 2016 classic site collection creation, which always takes quite a long time. Now, if I want to now do development and SharePoint Framework development in here, there's certain things which we need to remember. Now, first of all, let me actually create here this to, oh, do I have anything here? No, I don't have anything here. So let me actually run the SharePoint, not SharePoint, I can write Microsoft SharePoint. SharePoint. So this one will start the SharePoint framework generator. And there is, I just can't do this properly. So let me actually do this. Yo. This is always good. Yes, I'm always doing that mistake. Thank you, David. But you can always start yo if needed, because if you're lazy, you can just select the Microsoft SharePoint from here, and then that's going to actually start this thing. Now, in my case, I've installed SharePoint Framework 1.4.1 to this environment. I'll show that one in a second, which means that when I actually create the solution, I want to target SharePoint Online, even though that's slightly confusing. But the SharePoint 2016 onwards is for SharePoint 2016. That will actually create you SharePoint Framework 1.1 version of the environment. This one, because I've actually installed 1.4.1, will create me 1.4.1 solution. So that's actually the right one. For now, whenever we get the SharePoint Framework 1.6 out, you will have a third version and third option in here, which will be then SharePoint 2019 onwards, including SharePoint Online. So in my case, I'm going to actually quickly break this. Let's see if I can actually find the right keys from my keyboard. I'm still learning this keyboard. No, come on. There we go. So in my case, I do have a SharePoint Framework installed, but it's 1.4.1. And how did I get that installed? It's actually getting installed. So if you do installation, and all of this is absolutely getting documented. So if I do npm install Microsoft SharePoint Generator, and I add explicitly the right version in the end of this command, that will then install the 1.4.1 version for me. So that's how you actually target the specific version to be installed on this machine. Cool. In my case, I've actually created a call extension just to show this one in practice, and I do apologize, we'll go slightly long today because I want to get this one documented as a video. So if I go call extension, there's my solution, which I can actually see over there as well. Let's actually do call up bundle ship. So I'm going to actually make that solution ready to get contributed. And then do a call up bundle package solution. So I'm not going to do debugging or anything. I'm going to just show that it's working properly. There we go, package solution ship. And there we go, and then Explorer, and let's open that one. So I'm actually able to see that I've just created a new version of the solution, and it is actually application customizer. And what that means that we can actually now install this application customizer to our app catalog. And there's certain things in preview which you might not actually, well, you need to be aware or don't get, let's say, fooled. So when I'm installing this solution, it is using asset packaging. The asset packaging means that my JavaScript files and my images are automatically hosted by the farm. So you don't actually need to host these JavaScript files anywhere, which is pretty cool. So it's inside of the solution package, almost like a sandbox solution, but not quite. Now, what it means then is that when I'm installing this, it's actually saying, so it's actually saying that the client-side solution will get content from following domains, and it's saying SharePoint Online, which is highly confusing, and that's a mistake because we just haven't actually considered the on-premises in this dialog. So it should say SharePoint Farm. So it's not actually copying anything on a SharePoint Online. You don't have to have a SharePoint Online. Everything is from the on-premises environment. Now clicking that is going to then install the solution, and that's now available. And now if I go back to that site which we just created, community call demo, site content, and I've installed or I have all of the capabilities available, I'm adding an app, I can actually see my SIG call demo client-side solution available. That's now getting installed on the page, and in any second we can actually then see the extensions available and getting loaded on the site. So let's see, 123 is still installing. There's a timer job running behind of the scenes in the server, and whenever the timer job has executed properly, we're able to see that the extension has been installed properly to the site. Now, what's also cool, just to pinpoint, is that this one, we do support tenant scope deployment, so you're able to use that one to push web parts. By the way, Pavel's comment, app deployment has been taking some time lately. This is my on-premises farm, so whatever has taken time for you doesn't mean that it's taking time for me in my on-premises farm. So that's a different setting. Now, there we go. There's my extension. Extension is getting rendered. It's a super cool header component, no, seriously, and a super cool and awesome footer. Oh my God. But you can actually see that my extensions are getting rendered properly in the on-premises farm. It's SharePoint 2019 and things are working. But the tenant scope deployment, like mentioned, supported. You're able to push web parts available to all of the sites. You're able to use that actually also together with the extensions, but then you need to enable the extension in a site-by-site level. One point still on the demo side of the story, if I go to the SharePoint and really pinpoint this one, it is a pity that we don't have a site designs available, which means that you can't actually modify the selection and you can't actually modify what's happening with the communication sites or the team site creation. And that is a nasty limitation. Technically, if you need to run code whenever the communication site is created, that means that, well, I shouldn't probably say this out loud, but there's always an option of implementing a farm solution and using feature stapling. So not necessarily the optimal solution, but then again, it's on premises. Farm solutions absolutely supported. If you want, you can still use classic experiences. You don't have to use the modern. You can gradually introduce the modern. So there's multiple different options for you to take advantage. So we do not force only modern in SharePoint 2019. But yes, Erwin, I said it, stapling. Erwin told me yesterday that you can't say that. But it is, if you have a business scenario that you need to enable running code whenever a modern communication site is getting created, probably feature stapling is the only way to do that. Now, let me actually go back on the slides and we can close up the call.